Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tom Newton, and I'm with Simba Technologies. And I guess depending on where you're joining us from today, it is either morning or afternoon or good evening. I would like to welcome you and thank you very much for taking the time out of your day, registering for today's webinar, and of course joining us today. We're pleased to present our webinar today. It's one in a series of webinars that we've done and will be doing on various topics around data connectivity and big data and combining and connecting the latest and greatest business analytics tools with today's data sources. Today we'll be specifically discussing how to build a driver in 5 days using the SimbaEngine SDK version 9.2. This version of our SDK was released in the second half of 2013, and we're now actively supplying it to our customers. It's in full GA, and we'll be going through all the features and functions of that sort of hallmark SDK. It's really sort of the cornerstone of our business here at Simba. In terms of housekeeping, we expect the webinar today to run for about 45 minutes. Because we're using GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar specifically, all the attendees are muted, and we do really encourage you, we want this to be as interactive as possible. During the webinar, please send us your chats and questions, and we'll accumulate those and we'll go through them one at a time at the end. We've left enough time at the end of the event today to go through all the questions. If by chance we didn't get to them all, we will certainly, we can tell who asked the question, and we can get back to you on a one-on-one basis. But the chat there is meant to be interactive, and we hope you'll take advantage of that. Yeah, we're real happy to address all the questions. We really want you to participate as much as possible. Also, I would urge you to go to Simba.com and download the SimbaEngine SDK. If you've got interest in building a data connector, please get the SDK, download it. We will give you immediately a 30-day evaluation license, and really encourage you to engage with us. I think you'll find that the amount of support and consulting that we give you during your evaluation phase is really unparalleled, and I think it'll be a real great advantage for you. So please go to Simba.com, ask questions to solutions@simba.com, and really just let us help you get moving along. So helping us today will be one of Simba's ace engineers, Kyle Porter. At this time, I'm going to bring Kyle in and just make sure that we've got a good audio connection and video. Kyle, are you there?
Hey, Tom. Glad to be here today.
How are you today?
Not bad. How about yourself?
Doing great, thanks. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy engineering tasks and joining us on the webinar. What I thought we could do is I'll give the folks a bit of an overview on Simba, on the company, a bit of a high level on the SDK and kind of the bits and pieces and parts that you get as part of the SDK. And then I'll bring you back in, and perhaps you could sort of crack it open and walk through the sample drivers in there, the documentation, and really give people a good idea on how to get started with the SDK. And just help them sort of get moving along. And we could even use this. We'll post this webinar on our website after, and we can use it as a bit of a training tool, I think, for people. How does that sound?
Sure, sounds good.
Good. All right. So I know you've got all your tools at the ready. I'll be probably about 10 minutes going through these quick slides, and then I'll call you back in, and we'll go from there. Sound good? Okay. Thanks, Kyle. We'll talk to you soon. All right, so back to the beginning. Who is Simba? Simba Technologies is an access and analytics solution provider. A lot of people say we are the biggest company in data that no one has ever heard of. And that's because of our position and what we do. We are really the plumbers or the glue to all of the new and disparate data sources that are out there that people develop on their own, and the embedded BI tools that organizations use. So there's always this business problem on how to connect those two worlds, and that's what Simba is, and that's what we do. So we talk about being a data access and analytics software company, and what we mean by that is that we provide the software that allows any data to be accessed anywhere, anytime, and we've been at this for over 20 years. So we really understand connectivity. We really understand how to connect any data anywhere, anytime. To the point of that, Simba we co-created the original ODBC standard with Microsoft, and that was over 20 years ago. And I'll talk about Microsoft in a second, but we have been at it for a long time. We've developed the SimbaEngine SDK from scratch. That is our own software and our own IP, and we use our SimbaEngine SDK to develop specific drivers that I'll mention in a sec. So that's all we do, is we provide connectivity for your applications to your data sources. Things like or applications like Tableau, which is sort of one of the real hot BI tools that are in the market right now. Excel, which everyone has on their desktop. ClickView and MicroStrategy, and the list is on and on. So we allow organizations, whether through our ISV partners or enterprises that use the SimbaEngine SDK directly with us, to allow those users to continue to use the BI tools that they love and enjoy, but yet connect to excuse me, to any data. If you're on our website, you'll notice that there's references to kind of two SDKs. One's the SimbaEngine SDK that we'll be talking about today, and then there's also the Simba Provider SDK. And the SimbaEngine revolves around relational data. So dealing with dealing with relational data, we always use the SimbaEngine SDK, but we also are very, very strong and have a terrific SDK in the Simba Provider, and that allows for connectivity of multi-dimensional data and the way that SQL and the ODBC standard is used in relational data. We have an MDX engine, and we allow for MDX connectivity and the use of those tools that rely on that. Some of the BI tools where you need to do aggregation and things of that nature. So that's what those differences are. We have an MDX for Oracle OLAP connector, O2X, and that whole Simba Provider piece. So you can have a look at that, and if you have different connectivity needs outside the relational world, you can have a look at that. The SimbaEngine SDK is a data driver development kit. So it is a full SQL capable data store. So it allows for the connection of non-SQL data. It allows for proprietary data stores with some SQL capability to connect, and multiple deployment options, which I'll go into. Excuse me. It is a completely OS agnostic, and it provides developers with the ability to develop and deploy a POC without IT support. So here in our building, we're quickly approaching 80+ people. Of our total headcount, I think over 60 are developers. We are a developer sort of based organization, and really what the use of the SimbaEngine SDK and the Simba Provider SDK is all about is allowing developers today to get on the to download it, get the software in their hands, and develop a POC without IT support, and really look and build a solution that will be solving a business problem within your organization. So we're all about being part of the engineering world, and empowering engineers to build high-powered performance software and being able to do that on their own. So you'll find that we are a very engineer-centric organization here, and we're here to help you get your software built as soon as possible. So what is the SimbaEngine SDK used for? So we talk about being the on-ramp to big data. So when the whole big data thing started to really explode 3+ years ago, Simba identified that trend very quickly. Using the SimbaEngine SDK, we built an ODBC driver for Hive. And we kind of put it out there and started to go around and knock on the doors of the major distros of Hadoop, and talk to them about using the Simba ODBC driver for Hive. MapR was the first company to sign on, and now they've actually re-upped with us, and they've extended their original agreement with us. And then we talked to DataStax and Hortonworks, and very quickly there was momentum, and the Simba ODBC driver for Hive, built on the SimbaEngine SDK, became the standard within big data, within the Hadoop and Hive world. From there, we built an HBase driver, and that's been licensed to a lot of these distros. We then spoke to Cloudera and Microsoft, and they both have their own Hadoop distros. They had built their own ODBC driver for Hive, looked at ours, and decided to deprecate theirs and to license the Simba ODBC driver for Hive, which really says a lot about the power of our technology, our support, and our ability to work with partners big and small. And then we developed next up an ODBC driver for Cassandra, and we've licensed that to DataStax, and they control about 90% of the Cassandra market, I should say. We've built an ODBC driver for Google for them, and you can get that from their website or from ours. And we built an ODBC driver for MongoDB, which some of you might be familiar with, and we've licensed that to Informatica, and it's being used as an ETL tool. So all of this comes from the SDK. We also engage, and our SimbaEngine SDK is used by enterprise customers to solve specific business problems within their organization. And one online travel company came to us. They used to be 100% Microsoft SQL house, and they started now, because they just needed to start to amass more data, collect more data, they started to use Hadoop and Mongo and some of the other big data platforms, and suddenly the ODBC drivers that they were connecting to their BI tools didn't work. And so they built themselves a web services layer, added some security around that, but they needed now a new set of connectors. They used the SimbaEngine SDK to do that. So that hopefully gives you some idea of what this tool is used for and who would use it. So now I flipped over to a graphical depiction of the SimbaEngine SDK of the stack, if you will. So I'm just going to kind of go up the stack, kind of give you an idea of how this jigsaw kind of puzzle kind of works together, and how all the pieces are there for you, and how you can use them to solve your particular business problem. So at the bottom, data. So we say we allow you to access any data anytime, and we mean it. So whether you have a traditional SQL data store, a NoSQL data store, big data, cloud data, doesn't matter. You can use that. And then moving up the stack into the data store interface. So that's what we refer to short form it as DSI, and that's the area where you work. When you open up the kit, you'll find, and Kyle will go through this with you, I think up to 9 sample drivers. And then what you're going to do is, and they're connected to a little mini database, but you're going to now connect that and write that DSI for your particular data store. And you can write the DSI in C++. That's always the preferred mode because it's just highest performance. But you can use C#. We have a lot of people using Java today. And so it's really developer friendly, as you can use whatever you want. And now you can go into the Simba SQL engine. When I get into the deployment options, you'll see how this is turned on or turned off. If you have a full SQL data store, you don't need to use the Simba SQL engine. You just turn it off and it just disappears. And then there's the communication layer, and then there are the interfaces. And so we fully support all the latest ODBC standard, JDBC, OLADB, and ADO.net. So it really is flexible and allows you to use the pieces that you want and turn off the pieces that you don't need. So that's sort of what the kit looks like from a high level. Now, if we want to give you an idea of deployment options, what we can do, let me just go back here. What we can do is let me just go out here. And I've just gone out to our website, and I would encourage you to come to the website and spend a lot of time. There's terrific documentation on our website, and as well as we'll put this video, the webinar up, and you can use that as training tools. And all the documentation is here under documentation. But in terms of the actual deployment options, so if you go to build an ODBC driver in under build and let's start here. So here's the simplest deployment. You have SQL within your data store, and you just want to write a single tier ODBC driver. So all you're concerned with is the DSI, and using the samples and the documentation, you can knock one of these out and get your POC running really quickly. We are here to help you get your POC completed. So you download the SDK, we immediately give you the eval license, and then we engage with you and make sure that you get your POC up and running as soon as possible. And that's our promise to you. And we don't charge for the SDK. We license you based on what you're going to produce. So if you're going to produce an ODBC driver for internal use, and just depending on the scope of that, we'll license you for that use. If you're going to take this ODBC driver and bundle it with your software and then ship it out to your customers, we would license you for that. But until the point that you get this thing running and you can really prove to your organization and to yourself and to everyone that this is going to work properly, we're just here to help you, and we'll make sure that you get this done. So this is what a simple single tier SQL looks like, deployment looks like. Now, if we moved here to non-SQL data source, you can see what's happened. The only difference is that the Simba SQL engine has popped up. And in this case, this is non-SQL. So what's occurred is that we're making the point that you can add SQL to this. So you can have any kind of flat files, XML data source, cloud data, really anything, anything that goes. And the Simba SQL engine then becomes part at your disposal to use. So and this is still a single tier. Now, if we wanted to deploy in client server mode, then we could move to this scenario where you can actually put the SimbaEngine put the ODBC driver in client server mode, so you can deploy it on your server, and then there would be a client piece that would be installed on the client machine, and that would be using the Simba wire, the high performance wire protocol. So that's just to give you an idea of some of the flexibility within building an ODBC driver. And the whole reason why you want to create an ODBC driver is to connect to reporting applications like Excel, Access, Business Objects, Crystal Reports, Cognos, MicroStrategy, Tableau, and all the ones we spoke of before. So now let's say you wanted to write a JDBC driver. So then we can go over to this this graphic, and you can see, okay, I've got SQL in my data. I don't need to use the Simba engine, the Simba SQL engine. And then what if I want to deploy as client server with SQL? And then what if I wanted to deploy as client server with the using the Simba engine, the Simba SQL engine, because I need help. I need these BI applications to understand SQL. I don't have it in my data, so that's a full SQL 92 engine, and we can apply SQL as the data goes through. We also have a feature called collaborative query execution, which allows you to say there's a lot of new data sources that have some kind of SQL in there. Mongo would be an example where they don't have SQL, but we would use our CQE to organize the data in such a way that we can take advantage of the reporting capabilities and the visualization capabilities that are available within the BI tools. And then, not to belabor the point, that exactly the same thing holds true if you want to do ADO.NET or all ADB. So this is all here for you to look at. Please feel free to come back to the website and kind of go through this, read the documentation, and I'm sure that it will really become clear in a hurry as to what we're doing. So just want to get back to the presentation here and just kind of go through some of the key features. The SDK fully supports ODBC 3.52, JDBC 3 and 4.0, ADO.NET support, support for Visual Studios 2010-2012, and data definition language, data manipulation language, support, extensive SQL 92 query support, which we talked about. The engine actually will support more than what the BI tools can support. So that's usually what happens, is that you only want to put as much of the SQL 92 features in there that the BI tools are actually going to take advantage of. The Simba SQL engine is extremely high performance, full Unicode code support, native support for 32 and 64-bit operating systems, multiple deployment options that we talked about, responsive customer support. We don't really have a customer support desk here. When you're asking questions, you pose a question to us, you're getting engineering level support from the people that wrote the SDK, and so you'll find that the support is extremely high. There's 9 sample template drivers and development guide, localized for 13 languages, multiple deployment options, wide OS support, Kerberos support, and DSI index level support. And then the key benefits, providing data access to SQL-enabled, NoSQL, or proprietary data sources such as big data, relational data, enterprise data warehouses, all of an enterprise-grade solution. Anywhere, whether you need to access your data mobile, laptop, desktop, flexible solutions, client and client-server, private and public cloud architectures, anytime. So connecting in real time to Excel, Tableau, or any reporting and analytics desktop. So you can do it yourself, design for ISVs and internal customers to quickly build their own driver. Build it in 5 days. We'll help you get through that with the development guides and our one-to-one support. Very cost effective. As I said, we don't charge for the SDK, and we'll just license it for the use that you want to use it for. And it's an expert in a box. So leveraging Simba's years of experience and millions of tests done on the drivers built using the SDK by leading data customers globally. And then lastly, I mentioned OS support. So we mean really open OS support. So support in any Windows platform, most of the Linux flavors, Solaris, HPUX, and we're now starting to do a lot on Mac as well, as as the BI guys start to launch their applications on Mac, there will be an increasing requirement and demand for that. So that's it for my side. I'm now going to bring Kyle back in, and Kyle, are you there?
Hey, Tom.
So hopefully that gave people a bit of an overview of what you're going to show them. We'll make you presenter. And Kyle, I just thought it might also be a good idea, as we're kind of new into 2014, we're a couple of weeks into the year, just to give the folks a sense of what have you been working on for the last couple of weeks or so? What are the kinds of projects that are taking up your time and that you're digging into?
Sure. So one of the things that we've been working on is we've been upgrading our Cassandra ODBC driver. So our current Cassandra driver supports CQL2, and DataStax and Cassandra recently released CQL3, so we've been working on upgrading our driver to work with the latest versions of CQL.
Gotcha.
And that should be out soon.
Okay. That's for the big data guys?
Yep.
Okay.
And then we've also we've been working with a customer in the military, and we've been working on an enterprise driver for them. They have a standard SQL backend, but they have a rather sophisticated security layer that they needed to use. So they've been implementing a driver using the SDK, which kind of inserts the security layer between their applications and their backend, so that they can correctly utilize their security layer. And then one of the other interesting things is you might have heard of Presto. So that's the big data source from Facebook.
Yep.
So we've been
open
working
source, right?
Yep, completely open source.
Yep, cool.
And we've been working on creating an ODBC driver, and Facebook is actually using the ODBC driver.
Right.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's great. Good. Okay, well that's terrific. I appreciate that. Kind of gives us an idea of the kind of things that you've been exposed to and that you're seeing out in the market. Okay, so I'm just going to mute myself. I can now see your screen loud and clear, and we'll just sort of hand it over to you, and then we'll come back and we'll do some questions, and we'll see what chats have come in and see how we can help the folks answer those questions.
For sure.
Okay, thank you.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to briefly go through what an install of the SimbaEngine SDK looks like, and kind of walk through the components so you can get a feel for what's here, and when you download it and install it yourself, you're not just tossed in. You can actually use this as a starting point and see what's here and quickly get started. So it's not going to be too technical. I'm going to look at some of the examples, but I'm not going to go in depth. So when you first install the SDK, it's going to install wherever you install it, and then you're going to see a structure like Simba Technology, SimbaEngine, and so forth. And then you're going to have these 5 directories. So the first place you're probably going to want to start is your documentation section. Kind of get a feel for what's here. So here's where our 5-day guides are. So if you're going to build an ODBC driver, depending on what language you're going to write it in, we allow you to write in C#, C++, or Java. You can use one of these 3 guides. If you're going to just build a JDBC driver or an ADO.NET provider, you'd use one of these guides. If you're going to be using the SDK, you're going to obviously want to look at the developer guide. And then if you're going to use the client-server components, you're going to use this one. We also have extensively documented the SDK, and we've generated a Doxygen API reference guide. So that's here as well as on the website. So this is probably going to be a good starting point from you. Data access components is where all of the kind of the reference and pre-compiled bits go for the kit. In the bin section, this is where you're going to have the 32, 64-bit, and managed binaries for the clients. And also in the managed section, you're going to have the libraries that you're going to link to if you're building an ADO.NET provider or you're building a C#-based ODBC driver. Similarly for 32-bit and 64-bit. The error messages section is where you're going to find all of the error messages for the SDK and all of the components. So if we open up this, you can see all the actual messages files. They're all just XML files. So if you wanted to, you could actually go in and change the messages. And you can see that we ship with 6 languages, and we also have another set of languages available as a language pack. And you can easily extend and add new localizations just by adding another locale directory here and then filling in the actual XML documents. Under the include section, these are just the headers if you're building an ODBC driver that you're going to need. And these just have the headers for the libraries for the kit. Under third party is any third party components that we make use of. We make use of XPath, ICU, and OpenSSL, and they're documented in our documentation, should you need to reference that. And then finally, under the lib section, these are where the actual libraries that you're going to link to are located. So we have all of our Java libraries, and we have the actual native libraries here. And one unique thing is that we ship both debug, release, static, and dynamic libraries. So it doesn't matter how you want to link your driver. There's always a library for you. One thing I should point out that we do have a Javadoc jar here. So if you want a specific Java-related documentation, you can find it here. You can also use the DSI API reference guide here, although this is generated from the C++. The comments are applicable to any of the DSIs. If you think back to the kind of Lego block diagram that Tom was showing, which had the DSI at the bottom just above your data source, that DSI can be written in C#, C++, or Java. And that DSI is mostly the same across any of the languages you write it in. We've tried to make it as similar as possible. The only differences are where the languages are different, or they want different styles. So that kind of covers the data access components. Setup has a few setup files if you want to manually set some things up. SSL Certificates has some example SSL certificates for client server, which we don't recommend to use, but they're there if you just want to get up and running quickly for testing. And examples is probably where you're going to spend most of your time. And this is where we ship the 9 sample drivers for the SDK, which kind of give you a working example of how to implement everything and how to get started. And these samples are actually what the Quick Start, the 5-day Quick Start guides are based on. So each Quick Start guide takes you through one of the examples and does a step-by-step walkthrough of where to modify the code to make it work with whatever your data source is. So I'm going to go through some of these and kind of show you what's what. So first up, there's the bin directory, and we've already built each of the examples, and we ship them so when you install the SDK, you can actually just start using one of these examples right off the bat. You don't have to build anything. And they're also here to act as a reference. So although we recommend copying one of the samples before modifying it if you're going to start your own sample, if you happen to not copy that and just start messing with one of the samples and it breaks, you can always go reference one of these to see how it was working unmodified. In the lib directory is the Java versions of the drivers, similar to the bin, which is the native. Under the databases section, you're going to find the actual data files that are read by the examples. So our code base example reads from DBS files. Our quick start example actually reads from text files. So these are just simple text files like this. And you can go and add new ones or modify the existing ones if you'd like. So if you're building an ODBC driver, what examples are you going to look at? You can look at the code base example, the quick start example, or the Ultralite example if you're going to write in C++. If you're going to write in Java, you can look at the Java Quick Start or Java Ultralite. And similarly for C# or another native language, or you can look at .NET Quick Start or .NET Ultralite. I'm not going to look at the code base sample. This is a reference implementation of a DSI, which shows some of the advanced features that you can use, such as Tom mentioned collaborative query execution, which enables you to pass down some of the functionality from the SQL engine into your data store. So if you have an advanced feature that you want to make use of and it's not showing in the Quick Start example, you can always look at the code base one and figure out how it's done from that. Or send an email to us and we will get back to you promptly. So I have the Quick Start example open here. And the Quick Start example uses our SQL engine. So as I mentioned, the Quick Start sample just reads from simple text files. But the driver itself still allows you to access it from a BI tool like Excel, and it still understands full SQL. So if you want to just type a SQL query like select star from table, ordered by whatever, it'll return the correct results. So when you open it up, you're going to have something like this. I'm using Visual Studio 2012. We also support Visual Studio 2010. So there's kind of two key sections here, core and data engine. I'm not going to really go into exactly what's in here, but just to give you a brief idea, we have the core section of our DSI, and that is loosely modeled on the ODBC model of an environment, connection, and statement. And then we also have a driver and a connection dialog. So if you connect and you don't have all the settings, you'll get prompted with a dialog. Most of the work is going to happen in the connection. This is where you're going to request credentials and validate them and make an actual connection to your data source. And if we look in the data engine section, we have a couple files here. Maybe I'll just make this a little bigger here. So this is using the SQL engine, as I said. So our data engine is responsible for returning some metadata, and it's also responsible for opening tables or opening stored procedures and the like. So if you have an open table call, you'll just look up the correct table in your data source and return that to the SQL engine, and it will take care of everything else. Similarly, we have a table object, and this is responsible for representing what you have in your data source as an actual relational object, and it allows you to move through the rows and actually get the data back. And that's kind of it for the important sections. One thing that I should mention is that you'll see a lot of these to-dos in the code. And the Quick Start guides reference these to-dos and kind of walk you through, on day one you'll do to-dos 1, 2, and 3 and change these, and so on and so forth. So these are just here as informational sections of what you need to change when you're customizing your driver. So that's good if you have a data source which doesn't understand SQL, like text files. But what if you have a data source which does understand SQL? Then you can use the Ultralite sample. So this is organized the same way. We have a core section. We have a data engine section. The core is set up the same way. In the data engine section, it's a little bit different. Since we're not using the SQL engine, instead of just opening a table, we're going to be passed the actual SQL query here. And it's our responsibility to parse that SQL query and figure out what that SQL query is trying to do. Is it trying to return a result set, or is it trying to do DML or DDL? And it's assumed that you already have a SQL-capable backend, and you would just pass that off to the backend. We also have a query executor, which represents kind of a query that's being executed. So it's being prepared, and now I'm going to supply parameters and execute it. And I can continue to supply parameters and execute it over and over again, and that's what this query executor object represents. And then we also have a table object. The Ultralite sample doesn't read from a backend because we didn't want to impose any dependencies, so we didn't want you to have SQL Server or something in the backend. This DSI example has all of the data hard-coded in memory. Everything's fully commented, so you can see what's going on. But for simplicity, we've just hard-coded everything, and you can go and run this driver, and no matter what SQL you execute, you're going to get back the same hard-coded data. But use this example if you have a SQL-capable data source, and you want to write an ODBC driver for it. So that kind of covers the native ODBC drivers. So what if you are a Java shop? You don't like C++, you don't like C# or the others. So you can build an ODBC driver in Java. If you have a SQL-capable backend, you're going to use Java Ultralite. If you have a non-SQL Java backend, you can use Java Quick Start. These are straight ports of the Ultralite and Quick Start native examples. I have them open here. So if we just look at the Java Quick Start example, you can see we have the same connection, environment, driver, statement, and so on. And if you look at our data engine class, we had the exact same classes as we had in the native section. So I'm not going to go through this guy. The only thing I'm going to mention is that when you actually go into the code here, you're going to notice this Gini DSI and this DSII. So because you're still implementing an ODBC driver, it still needs to interact with native code because ODBC is a native interface. So our ODBC layer will sit as a front end, and then to act as the bridge between the native code and the managed code, we've written a layer which does that translation. However, there still needs to be a little section to say, what jar am I looking at? What's the name of the driver that I need to load? So there's essentially 2 or 3 functions you need to implement in this. So you can see it's really simple. And all this is responsible for is loading the actual jar, which contains your Java code. And so if you have a SQL-capable backend, you're going to use the Java Ultralite sample. When you open it up, it's going to look a little bit more intimidating. If you're doing ODBC, you can essentially ignore these 4 packages, the hybrid JDBC3 and JDBC4. These are only relevant if you're doing a JDBC driver, and I'll get back to that. But otherwise, everything is exactly the same as you would see in the native version. So what happens if you want to do it in C#? You're going to use the .NET Quick Start and the .NET Ultralite. So once again, Quick Start uses the SQL engine. Ultralite uses assumes you have a SQL-enabled backend. I'm not going to go through the Quick Start example because it's essentially the same thing, and it would kind of bore you guys, I'm sure. The Ultralite sample has 1 extra folder, which you can ignore if you're not doing ODBC. This is only for an ADO.NET provider, and I'll get back to that guy too. So what if you're building a JDBC driver? You're going to want to look at the Java Ultralite sample. And this is where these extra packages come in. So the SDK has the ability to build JDBC3 drivers, JDBC4 drivers, or it has the ability to build a hybrid driver where it will load as a JDBC driver or JDBC4 driver depending on the environment or what you've specified. So under these, you'll see a couple files. There's really not much to be specified here. You'll have to change 1 or 2 things that's outlined in the C++ or the JDBC Quick Start guide. And similarly, this one also has to-dos in it. And this lists exactly where you need to change the code. But all these 4 is the JDBC3 sections for a JDBC3 driver, the 4 is for a JDBC4 driver, and the hybrid is for one or the other, depending on how you've connected. So when you're building an ADO.NET provider, you're going to want to use the .NET Ultralite. Oops. Just opened Tableau there accidentally. So you're going to want to use the .NET Ultralite provider. And you can see that it's set up the same way. I've got it open here. And you're going to use everything that you used in the ODBC section, except you're going to have this additional .NET folder. And this is just customization of ADO.NET objects for this driver. And there's not much to these. Might take a second to open up here. You can see essentially it's just going to be renaming the class names. There's no actual code in here. And this is for branding. So when you actually build a .NET provider, you're not going to see Simba.NET command. You're going to use a UL.NET command or whatever you're going to name your driver. Which brings up a good point, is that the SDK is fully rebrandable. So when you build a driver, you can white label it and change all the branding from Simba to your company name or what have you. So that kind of goes through all of the examples and where you'd start depending on what you were building, and if you have a SQL-capable backend or a non-SQL-capable backend. And as I said, all of that's outlined in the 5-day guides, and they walk you through exactly what you're going to change in each of the samples to get from where you started to where you need to be. So that pretty much wraps up my section. Tom, are you there?
Thanks, Kyle. Yes, I'm back, and I think I got my throat re-intact, so I'm feeling a little better. Sorry, everyone, if it was a little rough there for a while. But yeah, no, that was terrific, and I think that will supply everyone or provide everyone with a terrific understanding of what the SDK can do. And as we mentioned before, using this webinar once we post it up on the website as a tool to go back to and refer to between that and the documentation and that one-on-one personal contact that we provide. Yeah, I think we're in great shape to provide everyone with all the tools that they need to get a driver up and running in 5 days as promised. So really appreciate all your expertise and help today with that. So while we were doing this, I know we've run over just a touch. We'll go through the questions at this point to keep to our promise of around 45 minutes. Nav from our marketing department's been monitoring the chat window on GoToMeeting, and we do have a couple of questions that have come in. So Kyle, perhaps if you could just hang with me here for a sec, I'll go through them, and maybe you can help me address them. And then we'll kind of wrap it up. Great. Okay. So question one. Someone they're concerned about performance, which makes sense. If they're trying to pull a row within the table, when they run a query, will it pull the entire table across? So I think that's kind of self-explanatory. What would be your advice on something like that?
Sure, so that's a good question. Depending on what you're doing, the SDK may or may not pull across the entire table, and let me explain what I mean by that. So if you're just doing a select star from table, then it's just going to fetch the row that it needs. So if you're fetching the first row, it'll just ask you for the first row, and then it's up to your DSI implementation for how much you're actually fetching back from your data source. If you're doing something like a count star, then the SDK needs to obviously go through each row in the table to figure out how many rows there are. However, once you've implemented a basic driver, you might find that you want to optimize it. And that's when collaborative query execution comes in, which Tom mentioned and I mentioned briefly. And what that allows you to do is essentially take the count star operation and move it from being executed in a SQL engine to being executed in your data source. And in that case, the SQL engine would just ask you for how many rows is in the table, and then you would return the number of rows. So in that case, we would just need that one value. We wouldn't need all the rows in the table. And similarly, if you have filters or joins or aggregations, you can also move those down into your data source. So I guess the short answer is it depends on the level of optimization that you've done in your driver for how many rows are going to be returned and how you've implemented your DSI. But we've implemented things so that we're only doing the minimal amount of work and we're doing it as efficiently as possible, depending on what the capabilities of your driver are.
Okay, terrific. All right, there's more questions coming in. Can I build a driver that reads and writes data?
Yeah, so you might have noticed that on one of the feature points that it had DDL and DML. And for those of you not in the know, that essentially means that you can create tables and indexes and drop them, and then you can also insert, update, delete, and all of the fun stuff that entails. So you can insert from a table into another table and delete according to subqueries and whatnot.
Okay, good. There's a question here for Hive data sources. Which one would be the quick start for developing with .NET, and would that be Net Quick Start?
Sure. So if you're implementing in Hive, it kind of depends on what you how you want your driver to work. So Hive has HiveQL, so you could use the .NET Ultralite and have that just pass through your HiveQL from the application, and then you wouldn't need to inject our SQL engine in, which may or may not be a good thing. If you wanted to use our SQL engine, then you would use the .NET Quick Start, and that would involve our SQL engine.
Okay, good. There was a sort of a BI-centric question. If I use your toolkit to build an ODBC driver, will it work with Tableau? And yes, absolutely. Tableau is a native ODBC BI compliant tool. So we've partnered with Tableau. We're doing work with them to build connectivity software for them specifically, and we do a lot of engineering level support back and forth, as we have many customers that rely on Tableau as their BI tool. And so we highly optimize against Tableau in any of the work that we do here. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. How do we get support while developing the ODBC driver with your SDK? For sure. So what we encourage you to do is download the SDK. We'll give you the evaluation license, and immediately we'll start to engage with you. We can have you send us, actually to back up, we can do an initial call with you and discuss your use case and the business problem you're trying to solve and get you started. The documentation is very thorough. Things like these webinar tools are great. And then as you move through this, we ask you just to email us with your questions, and we're very responsive. We'll come back to you immediately with a response. And if one or two sort of questions sort of build up, we'll just jump on a webinar, a WebEx with you and walk through it and get it solved right away. So we will absolutely make sure that that you've got all the answers that you need and that you get this thing built fast. And the email, just
one other thing I should mention is that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, Tom. One other thing I should mention is that the evaluation SDK that you get is in no way crippled from the production version. The production version is going to be in the evaluation version. The only thing is it's licensed, and when you get the production version, we remove that licensing requirement from our end. Or I should say the license file.
Right. Good. Okay. Good. So email contact for technical questions, you send them to solutions or once you've become engaged with us, you can just send those questions directly to the person that you're dealing with. A lot of the times it's just myself, and I use Kyle and some of the other engineers here. So as I said, we'll get back to you immediately with your technical answers to your questions, and as I said, if it's best to jump on a WebEx, we'll just jump on the WebEx. But once you download it, you'll be connected with someone, and that person will be your key contact moving forward until this thing's finished and we've got your license. All right.
And then support doesn't end. Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
Support doesn't end after you've finished evaluating. Once you finish building,
it just starts, right?
You've licensed. Yeah, exactly. Once you've licensed everything, and you're going along, if you encounter any problems, we also have another email address for the official support line. And then, as Tom mentioned, our support line is manned by the people who actually built the SDK. So when you have a problem, then you'll actually get an engineer responding to you.
Great. Okay, so there's a question. Do you have a system already in place, off the shelf, without modifications for flat, fixed length files?
So we do have the quick start example, which uses tab delimited files and an XML file associated with it for metadata. If you're looking to change that format to like a fixed length, it would be really simple to just take that, one of the quick start samples, and modify it to the data format that you have in files. And then the quick start guide essentially walks you through where you need to modify that.
Great, we can help them just make those minor changes.
For sure.
Yeah, good, okay. What kind of performance numbers, throughput on byte per second can we expect in client server mode for parameterized bulk inserts? So I'll take the first part and then I'll hand it over to you, Kyle. So sure. we don't keep or share specific performance numbers. As we outlined before, so much of our work are done with ISVs, and with enterprise customers where they take the SDK, they will deploy and run it within their system. So there aren't we don't see the performance numbers. What we do know is that people that are looking for a specific, like for a Hive driver, they bench test it against all other Hive drivers that are out there, and Simba has won in every single case, is now we're the de facto standard for Hive. There are just so many cases where we've been approached by companies that have either tried to build their own ODBC driver, they've used other SDKs that are out there, whatever the case is, and they've come back and told us that they've run performance and they want to license the Simba SDK because it's provided with the highest performance driver. Now, Kyle, as that pertains to client-server mode for parameterized bulk inserts, can you provide any insight into that?
Sure. So Tom's right. We don't have specific numbers, and a lot of that is because so much of the performance depends on the implementation of the DSI. So if you have a really highly optimized DSI, you're going to get more performance than someone who just throws together a DSI because they need quick connectivity from Tableau to their data source. So it's very highly variable and very dependent on the quality of the code and the quality of the optimizations that you've implemented in your DSI. With client-server, you're going to take a little bit of a performance hit versus not using client-server, just because there is that hop from the machine to machine and using the wire protocol and going over the wire. But we have done significant optimizations in that area, and we're looking to do more. And I know there have been a couple of customers who have had other client-server implementations, and they've replaced them with the one from the SDK, and they've seen both response times go down and throughput go up. I can't name names, and I can't give specific numbers, but I know there have been several customers that have done that.
Great, good. Okay, thank you. There was a question on licensing, and so we do not charge for the SDK. I think we're very rare in that regard. We do license the SDK for your use, so use and distribution. So I'm going to build an ODBC driver with the SimbaEngine SDK, and I want to provide and install the ODBC driver around my enterprise. So we just work on some metrics based on sort of numbers or approximate numbers. Is it departmental? Is it enterprise? Are you a company that just has one group of people that are going to need this, or are you a worldwide global organization with 10 sub-companies that all want to use this? So because we deal with companies that are just starting up, say in the ISV world, we deal with the largest software companies like HP Vertica and SAP and Teradata. Those licensing models all look a little bit different. So we're just happy just to kind of walk through that with you. So it's basically, is this for inside the enterprise, or is this to be licensed to an ISV? It's going to be included with their software, and then what's the scope of the distribution that you have planned? We'll just work with you on that. But we don't charge for the SDK. We make sure you get the POC up and running, and then we will license you from there for your use and distribution. So we're coming up to, we've been at this for an hour, so a little bit we've run over. We have all of the questions. I think there's still a few that have not been answered, and we have your email addresses, and we'll come back to you individually, and we will provide answers to that. Also, if you wanted to post those questions to solutions@simba.com, we'll do that. And as I said, the best way to kind of work with us is to get that SimbaEngine SDK downloaded, get your 30-day eval license going, and we'll get you up and running in short order. So I think that's about it. We had a great crowd today from really all over the world. It was really exciting to see where people were from today. Very large group, lots of great questions. And we will be posting this webinar in video YouTube format up on our website probably within 4 or 5 business days. And I really look forward to hearing from all of you. And Kyle, thank you very much for your support on this today, and we'll do it again soon.